This episode of Whitecap is brought to you by North Sails. Faster by design. North Sails racing sails are designed to be lightweight, durable, and highly responsive to even the slightest wind shifts. With a focus on innovation and cutting-edge technology, our team of expert designers and engineers have developed some of the most advanced racing sails on the market today. From the latest 3DI technology to our state-of-the-art sailmaking facilities, we are committed to delivering the highest quality sails that will help you achieve your best performance on the water. Find your race sails today with one of our local experts. Hey, welcome to Whitecap, the Canadian Sailing Podcast. Today, I'm super stoked to welcome sailmaker and pro sailor Drew Mitchell. Drew grew up sailing in Lunenburg in Nova Scotia. He's raced on and coached high-performance one-design sailboats for over 20 years. He managed North Sails Vancouver for over a decade and has recently moved back to Nova Scotia, buying North Sails Atlantic. Drew races in many of the biggest high-performance keelboat fleets, and including the win at the Far 30 North Americans, the Melges 24 Pacific Northwest, and in distance racing, his experience in winning the Van Isle 360, which is around Vancouver Island, pretty cool race, the 2017 Transpac on a TP52, podium finishes in the Chicago Mackinac, Victoria to Maui, everybody, that is a Transpac race. Part of Team Canada for the 2023 Star Sailors League as a trimmer, and has been a North U coach for the last 10 years, working with sailors on and off the water from across North America to refine their racing skills. Drew, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks a lot, David. I really appreciate it.
So, we usually start off with some short answer questions. You ready to go?
100%.
Okay. Favorite place you've ever sailed?
Mahone Bay, Nova Scotia.
Yes. Okay. Your position in hockey?
Left wing.
Nice. You're only, I just thought every man that I spoke to on this podcast who was a sailor had all played hockey.
Yep.
But besides you and Ramshaw and Ken Dool, that's it. Most guys were skiers or whatever. So,
yeah, no, there's
very
a bit of a crossover on the East Coast here.
True. Dream race or regatta you'd like to sail in?
Probably Sydney to Hobart.
Oh, yes. Any chance that might happen?
There's definitely, I've talked to a couple teams that have been interested, but we'll see what happens.
That would be really cool. Do you have any nicknames?
Not too many. I used to have one in lacrosse called Sunshine. And
Why was that?
I wore a yellow helmet.
Okay.
I was living out west. And I played for a team with yellow colors, and I moved back here to Nova Scotia, and people weren't too fond of it. Let's just put it that
way. Okay. Do you have any superstitions, sailing related?
Yeah, I definitely like to do everything the same way. And like in the mornings. And the year that I was lucky enough to win Chester Race Week in the Blue Nose class, I wore the same shorts, every piece of clothing, every single day. We had a good first day, and we just kept rolling. We went wire to wire with the event, and yeah, I had to put those clothes to bed after that event.
And did all the other crew also stick with the same outfit?
No, it was just me.
And was it like spoken out loud, or you just did it? You just like in your own mind?
I just didn't. It's just something. I'm very superstitious. It's probably started in my hockey career, and if things are going well, I try to repeat what's going well, no matter if it's what you're eating for breakfast or what you're putting on your body.
Do you have anything about green ropes? That's come up and down.
No, I don't mind green ropes.
Okay. So, Nanaimo Bar or Donair?
Nanaimo Bar.
Nice. Did not expect that. Best boat to port tack the fleet with? Best class?
Oh, well, that's a tough one. I would say, well, I guess I'm a little bit biased here, but Blue Nose.
Okay. Just because you know what speed it's going, you know what you're looking at.
Yeah, you're going about 4 to 5.2, so it's like super slow-mo. You can stare everyone in the eyes as you cross them. And the bows are really pointy, so your heart's always jumping a little bit.
Okay. I like that, staring people in the eyes. Because I've seen these guys do it on like kite foilers and stuff, and it's just like someone's gonna die. But anyway, Far 30 or Martin 242?
Far 30.
TP 52 or Blue Nose?
Blue nose.
Okay. Had to think though.
I did have to think about that for a second.
Okay. Favorite sale you've ever made slash worked on as a sailmaker?
Probably the 2013 Volvo Ocean Race main sail for Kenny's boat. What was that? El Moro 2? The one with the big
Okay.
squid on it. I was working down in Midden at the Super Loft during that Volvo race for about a month and a half. So I was pumping out a bunch of those sails, and Kenny was, and it still is, part of North Sales. So we finished his sales at the loft, where some of the other ones were shipped off to the teams to get finished.
Is that
And
Ken
that
Reed
that
we're
was
talking
that
about?
was pretty cool.
Is that
Pardon?
Ken Reed that we're talking about?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
okay.
Yeah, Ken was the skipper of two Volvo races with the Puma boats.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
pretty sexy looking boats, those ones.
yeah,
Do you
100%.
have any sports heroes?
My original sports hero was Marc Messier, hockey player, hard nosed, goal scorer, real known as one of the best captains, that in the sport of hockey. And then in sailing, I would say, Ross McDonald, by far. He really represents truly what it is to be a good sailor and a great person. I think the combination of both those really, I don't know, really means a lot to me, and I really look up to him and his sailing career.
Absolutely. Eventually, I'm gonna have Ross on this show. I'm sure. His name has come up so many times, and yeah, I'll be able to refer to all the people who've mentioned him over the years. Okay, so that was the short answer question section. You did extremely well. I'll give you 10 out of 10.
Perfect.
I've never given anyone a score for that before. So, so you grew up in Lunenburg. Like, how did you get into sailing initially?
So I've got a cottage on Second Peninsula. If anyone's I don't know, knows that area, which is just across the water from in Princess Inlet, where Lunenburg Yacht Club is. So we actually share our property with my cousins who are slightly older than me, and they were over at the yacht club having a lot of fun. And I just thought that it looked like a really good time. And I actually, at the time, my uncle was the sailing director, and I convinced him at the age of 8, and he had to be 9, to let me go. And I kind of got in, but after about a week of being there, I don't know if I was mature enough as an 8-year-old to truly be there, and they actually asked me to go home for the summer and come back the next year.
Were you
So that's
just
kind of how it all started. Just getting over the yacht club. My dad owned a powerboat, and we were over there, and it just looked like a blast. And so I got into it as soon as I could.
That's interesting at that age thing because my son did it. He started at 8. That was for our sailing school. That was the early
Yep,
age, and he was just there. But he like his first years, he just kind of ran around the boats and like would hide from people and like hang off the back of a 420. And then kind of got into it. And my daughter, we tried at that age, and then she just didn't take to it, and then basically came back at like 12 and like
yep.
really fell in love with it. So it's something to think about as a parent, like not to pressure anybody into it.
No, and I think they've also, like, they developed the program a little bit differently now. So with the wet feed program, which I think is pretty cool, it's kind of like a daycare for people that like to be on the water. And you kind of get familiar with being on the water and being around boats. It's not so much a sailing school per se. I just thought that would be pretty cool. As a young kid, I probably would have been in that for sure. And I think that's a good way to go instead of putting an 8-year-old or a 7-year-old in with a bunch of 10 and 12-year-olds,
Yeah,
which, I don't know, they don't really mingle as well or work out as well.
true. So like, tell me about how you like developed from the time you could first kind of sail until you were like, hey, this is what I want to pursue as a career. I mean, that's a long period of time, but kind of how
Yeah,
you really
so
got into it.
I was always like the Lunenburg Yacht Club, and it's pretty funny, like right from White Sail 1, which was an old type of levels, to Silver Sail, there was like racing throughout the whole summer, and I was one of those kids that spent the entire summer at the yacht club. I would do for all 4 sessions, and So it was immediately in my blood and all my friends to kind of compete for these little trophies every few weeks, whether it was the Seamanship Trophy or the Mahone Bay Race or whatever it was. And we kind of grew up together racing for all these inter club trophies. And then I started laser racing, and Lunenburg had a decent sized team. And then soon as I probably turned 14 or 15, the everyone was a few years older than me on the race team, and they all kind of graduated out at 17 or 18 and had to go get summer jobs. And I was the only laser racer at the Lunenburg Yacht Club for a little while. And so I traveled around by myself with, the help of Brian Todd. Used to actually throw my laser in his big coach boat and drag me around, and I would, hang out with the Wag Baltic guys and the RNSYS guys and just kind of try to tag along. And then I was lucky enough in my last year, or one of my last years, I think I was 17. They hired one of your buddies, Chris Waters, to be the coach at Lunenburg Yacht Club. And we had a few more members of the race team at that point, all kind of just getting into the racing scene. I've been doing it for a few years. And basically, Chris was kind of like my private coach. He lived at my cottage.
Oh, wow.
We sailed every day together. He was still kind of actively racing laser full rig. I think he was campaigning for the Canada Games at the time. So we'd go out sailing against each other. And he really kind of took me from a sailor that was good at the club level to someone that could compete nationally and really step my game up. So I had a lot of fun that summer. I had a lot of success that summer. And then once that was done, I was thinking I really wanted to continue laser sailing and doing all that stuff. And I was trying to figure out a summer job that would allow me to race and sail. And at that point, LYC had contacted me and they needed a race coach. So I kind of hemmed and hawed about it for a second, and there was a big youth group coming through the bronze level, or the last level before you get on the race team, and I kind of jumped at the idea, and it was probably the best decision of my young sailing career, because there's probably a lot of sailing coaches that are listening to this podcast, but there is nothing better than coaching sailing for 8 to 10 weeks during the summer months and getting paid to do what you did growing up, traveling around with a bunch of young athletes. I thought I was a race coach, it's different if you're at the club level, but I was going to the same events I was always going to. I think in my first year, I actually coached from my laser at the Nationals in the
Oh,
Bay.
yeah.
I wanted to get back into it, and I quickly realized I was not as quick as I used to be. So I decided to stay on the coach boat after that one. But I had a really good youth group, and we all were kind of out at LYC, and that team really started building. And I did it for about 4 or 5 summers. At one point, I think we had 22 laser sailors out of
Wow.
LYC, and I just really love the coaching aspect of it and taking these kids and traveling around with them, going to big events. And we're a small yacht club, Lunenburg Yacht Club. To have 22 kids, and we were challenging teams like RCYC, RNSYS, RVYC, and we were this small little yacht club, and we had a lot of fun doing it. And I'm still friends, very best friends. I probably stood in a couple weddings in the spring with sailors that were on my race team. Between the 420 group that Leslie Taylor was coaching and
Yep.
the laser, I think we had like almost 40 kids. We actually had to have other instructors come on the road with us to help us because we just had so many sailors traveling around.
Right.
And a lot of those sailors are continuing sailing today,
That's awesome.
which is really nice to see. I actually just had this. Bryant Wood was on the team. Bria Wood. Brian's mother actually, she said, Drew, you had so much fun with this, and the team's been very successful. And like, what do you like? What do you think you're going to do? And I really didn't know. And I had a business degree, and so I was like, I might become a banker or a businessman or whatever, my thought was. And she says, I don't know if that's exactly, for you, but at the time, I, uh, I really didn't have too many options. And I actually had just interviewed for the provincial coaching job for Sail Nova Scotia. And I got shortlisted. It was down to me and this other gentleman, and the other gentleman got the job. And I decided to pack my pack my buddy's car and drive to Vancouver. And so I drove out west, started trying to get, just handing out resumes to anywhere I could. And I dropped one off with Ross McDonald. And he said, nothing's available right now, but kind of, I'll get back to you if something opens up. And that's what I always tell these younger people that are trying to get in the marine industry. Um, just because you go and drop off a resume or there's an opening, doesn't mean you're going to get it. But if you just, if there's something you want to do, contact them, let them know you're interested, and eventually something will open up. And if you contact them, that's a good opportunity or a good chance that they're going to reach out to you because you've shown interest in them.
Was
Yep.
that
So
the
go.
plan though? Like so you didn't get the gig as a provincial coach and you just like, I'm going out there to try to do something sailor related. I'm not going to try to
Not
be a
sale related.
banker.
I was just trying. Well, I would love to be sale related. Yeah, I wanted to coach or do something. I was thinking about running some sort of laser training center or something, and I ended up working at the bank at RBC, and that was not really a job for my skill set, really,
Right,
or
right.
just the way that I work. It wasn't something that I enjoyed doing every day, and luckily I got a call from Ross, and he needed like a junior salesman at the loft, and I thought I'd be this junior salesman selling all this stuff and doing this and that, and really I was like pulling staples and learning how to fix old sewing machines and sewing giant Canadian flags together, and I was really just kind of like a helper on the floor at the loft. I did follow Ross around, and I was kind of the face at the loft when he was fairly busy traveling around sailing. But I was very lucky to work under master sailmaker Dennis LaFoe, who really taught me a lot about sailmaking and sail repair, but also taught me about hard work and how Norse Sails and Dennis really, take care of the customer. And that was kind of my path through kind of dinghy sailing into coaching, and then transitioning into a sailmaker. And I probably spent 2 years kind of on the floor, and then I was fairly young. I was kind of this like junior salesman, and Kimo Worthington, who was the sales manager, he's an old pro sailor that was the sales manager for North America, um, gave me the opportunity to start running the loft at a fairly young age. I think I was probably 24, 25. And a lot of people were questioning his move, but he had complete support for me, and always answered his phone when I called him when I had questions. And on top of that, I also had Dennis, who manages the service industry. In theory, I was the manager of the loft, but I did not need to manage Dennis in any means or sense.
I
I was
I was
learning a
gonna
lot from
say,
him.
like the experience of being a banker and it not working out. Like I don't know what book I read this in, but they say like failure is your friend. Like figure out what you're not good at so quickly, so you can move on to something you are good at.
Yeah, no,
So
totally. No, I completely agree with that. Not getting that Nova Scotia provincial job, I thought that was the job that I wanted and it would be perfect for me. And that sent me out west. And sending me out west, ended up with RBC. And then RBC wasn't really my thing. And Ross gave me a call. And, now I'm sitting here in Lunenburg, Nova Scotia at my own sail off. So things kind of worked out.
that's so cool. So yeah, I'm also interested in the pathway. So I don't think I knew about your kind of dinghy career because it's not really in your CV exactly, right? So
Yep.
because you've done so much like keelboat racing going forward. So like I'm really interested in that sort of pathway that kind of took you through coaching. I mean, that's like where we lose a lot of sailors is right there when you moved out to Vancouver and you had your degree and you're like, okay, I'm going to keep trying to do this sailing thing. And you managed to kind of make a living from it, not just as a sailmaker, but as a sailor and so forth. So, how would how would you describe that move from being a dinghy sailor to being sort of a pro sailor? And is that something that other people could do if they wanted to keep sailing, but didn't end up on the national team, for lasers and going to the Olympics or whatever?
Yeah, no, 100%. And that was, so like it's funny. There's people talk about pro sailors. They kind of categorize them in sailing world. So it's Cat 3 and Cat 1, and previous to when I worked in the industry, there was a Cat 2, which was an industry pro. So if I liked it or not, soon as I became a sailmaker, I automatically became a Cat 3. And
We
if you
should like
look,
back that up and explain like category
yeah,
one. What does that mean?
so category one is a Corinthian sailor, so you're not paid to go sailing. And then so that's like 99% of most Canadians.
Right.
And there's just just Canadian sailing the way that it is. It's just not a lot of people get paid to go sailing up here. If you go down to Newport, there's a lot of sailors in Canada that go out on boats wherever in Ontario, Nova Scotia. They'd be like getting paid $750 a day to get on a boat, but that's just not the reality up here. And I think it's not a bad thing. Like it really keeps the sport, keeps people a little bit more humble up here, and the enjoyment of the sport is still here. Then category three is a professional sailor, but it's also if you're in the industry and you have like an advanced knowledge of the textiles or the sails of your using. So if you're like a boat builder, you could be a category three. If you're a sailmaker, you're a category three. Riggers can be category threes. And then there's people like that are full on professional sailors that live and die and put food on their plates by sailing in regattas and getting paid a day rate and being with programs. So I was never, I still then, I do have times where people will pay me to get out on the sailboat, but that does not put food on the plate here. My main thing is a sailmaker, and as a sailmaker, I got to meet a lot of people, installing sails, being in the industry, and meeting a lot of nice families and friends through the sailing community. That I started to grow my relationship in the sailing industry. So I would say more of myself, I would be an industry professional, and there is opportunities where I'm lucky enough to get on programs that help me out.
It's interesting also that, and I wanted to get into the kind of offshore sailing that you've done, and that's got to have been, you didn't race from like Mahone Bay to Sable Island and back, so it must have happened when you got out there at west, and that's something that I want to get more into because there is a great number of people that do offshore sailing, and there is money to be had as a crew, and also just experiences and stuff that I don't cover as much on this podcast because it's not as big deal in Canada as it is for example in Europe or whatever. But like, how did you go from being a manager of a sail off to like doing the Vic Mao on a TB 52? Like that must have been so cool and very very
Y-
different.
Yeah, no, 100%. And another thing just wanted to speak about on that last point was you know there is different avenues, and I had a long talk with Og, who works with Sail Inspire GP or Sail Inspire, whatever, and they're really trying to make different pathways that get people involved in the industry itself, whether if it's helping out at Sail GP or getting brought down on professional programs and just getting there and putting the time in, because getting the experience is very important. So and people that are looking to stay in the industry, if you can't get in a sailmaker, you can't get into a boatyard or a rigging shop, I would reach out to those type of programs because they really fuel the fire to get people opportunities in different spots that you wouldn't be able to do as your average Nova Scotian sailing coach or laser sailor phenom, so I think that really kind of made me kind of excited that people are doing that now. Instead of, as you said, it's like go to the Olympics, train your butt off, go to the Olympics, and then now you're this classified professional sailor, or you did it at the top level. So people are going to want to hire you, or you're going to be able to get a job in the industry on a sailboat. That's not it at all. Some of the best pro sailors I know were not very good dinghy sailors, and for whatever reason, they weren't in the sport, or their size didn't really match up with the type of dinghies that are in the Olympic classes. So that's kind of where I would recommend if other people are looking to continue on in the sport of sailing, maybe reach out to Og and that team, because it seems like they got a lot of really cool things on the go to help people move on.
Yeah, just to explain that, we're talking about Augustin Ferrario, who's also been on the show, Argentinian brought the squadron or the Nova Scotian sailors up to a level that I couldn't have imagined when I used to sail in the 90s. Like back then, the New Brunswick sailors and the Nova Scotia sailors were kind of like, sort of level. And now all of a sudden, Og came in and they're all going to the Olympics, you know.
Yeah, no, he
So,
did. He did a great job.
and so he runs this thing, Weekend Foil, which is, like you say, it's a learn to foil program, but it also is able to connect with a lot of the pro sailing and foiling things. And yeah, very interesting guy. And yes, reach out to Og, reach out to trying to do foiling because that's the new sailing, like basically at the
Yeah,
highest end.
for sure.
Yeah,
And then
so
what was that question that we were just
oh, we were
like?
talking about offshore sailing, how you got
Oh
into
yes,
doing that, and like it's got to be a huge change to race across the Pacific
yeah,
from, you know, I don't know, building Martin 242 sails and doing,
yeah, no,
racing in the English
100%.
Bay.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like so, like out west, they actually do kind of quite a bit of distance racing. They usually race inside Georgia Strait, and they have races like Swiftsure, Southern Straits. They have races around Vancouver Island. So I kind of got my feet wet with those kind of 100 to 200 nautical mile distance races around the PNW. That would sometimes take way longer than you would ever want to. Um, so it almost felt like an ocean race sometimes. But and those races are, it's like I'm a one design guy. That's probably where my real heart is. But when you're on in a distance race and you gotta like wake up and make boat go fast and then go back to sleep and wake up and make boat go fast, that is probably one of the coolest lifestyles you can have. And there's a huge team aspect to it and all that. So I started with just bounce around the Pacific Northwest doing distance races. They have probably about 4, 5, or 6 throughout the year that are, I don't know, between 50 and 200 miles. And I was enjoying them for sure. But I got an opportunity just through a customer of mine that was putting Transpac program together on a TB 52, and it's a local boat. It was a boat that actually had won Transpac overall before a few years, not probably maybe 8 or 10 years before he owned it. So it had a bit of a pedigree. Our loft put a few sails on it for the race, and yeah, that was my real first 10-day offshore adventure, and it was a lot of fun. There was like Eric Holden, who was, I don't know if
Yeah,
you know
yeah,
Eric. Eric
yeah.
was the navigator on the boat, and not only making the boat go fast, we always had a lot of fun. He would come up from his station because he just couldn't figure out what was so funny up on board when there was like all he could see was like waves and clouds, and so we had a lot of fun on the boat. We sailed the boat pretty well, and it was a pretty cool year. That was the year that Comanche broke the record with Ken Reed, and we showed up to Long Beach, and we actually got a tour of Comanche before the race, which was like super cool because that's when the boat was first starting to come out, and like no one had seen a 100 footer that's like 30 feet wide in the stern, and the mast is like the bow is like twice as long as the stern, kind of like the J dimension's long, twice as long as the E dimension. The boom was way off the back. It was pretty cool, and like we got to talk with Stan Honey down in his pit, and it was all carbon toilet, like um,
Really?
oh yeah, carbon toilet, and like, and it was that was like that was the predecessor to the race, so it was pretty cool to link up with all those guys. And Richard Clark was actually on the program, so he kind of took us through the containers, and he's a West Coast guy, so we knew a lot of the crew.
He was on Comanche or on
Yeah,
the? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
on
Wow.
Comanche, yeah, yeah. So it's pretty neat to kind of start the race, and then and the Pac 52s had just come out at that time. They ended up winning overall that year. But so we had two brand new Pac 52s. We had Comanche on the starting line, a bunch of Santa Cruz 70s, like an Andrew 68, that the Pie Wacket. So that was like Roy Disney's
Oh
boat.
yeah, yeah.
So it's pretty cool to get on the start line with those type of boats and decide that we're all gonna meet up in Hawaii in like 10 days. Um, so that was a very neat experience for me. And there's there's distance race in the Pacific Northwest, but there's nothing better than, arriving in a tropical destination, like Hawaii. I've been able to do it a few times, and once you start seeing the islands after being at sea for a little while, it's pretty cool. And then you usually stick around for a few days or a week or however long to the award ceremony, and kind of check the islands out. And
Right.
I'd never been to Hawaii before, so that was a neat experience.
One thing like about those boats, you see, I mean, I guess that they were fairly new then, but now there's so many videos of these guys in their like, med series, and the crew work is unbelievable on these 50-foot boats. You can watch it, on YouTube, and like the chutes are down like a second. It looks like a 420, and the way that they're able, the crew work is like, I guess I just said that, but it's unbelievable. So I mean, there must be such an incredible amount of teamwork to get that thing to do what it looks like that can do.
Yeah, no, 100%. But offshore, it's a little bit different. So usually you're fully crewed off the start line, and then you go into a watch system. Once you're in the watch system, we were running with four. Eric was on the nav, and then we had four on our watch and five on the other watch. So really, you just had one guy driving, one guy on the pumps, one guy trimming, and another guy just kind of hanging out.
Okay.
Um,
What does that
so
mean on the pumps? That's the
Oh, the
grinding,
the
or
grinders, yeah. So you had like grinding, someone constantly trimming the kite. Oh, sorry, and main sheet. Sorry. So you had driver, main sheet, pumps, and trimmer, kite
okay.
trimmer. Because with the Transpac, the way it works is you get outside off of California, and then you hit the trade winds, and basically you put a spinnaker up. So you usually spend about a day to 3 days, like reaching after you pass Catalina. So usually it's like a jib top or some sort of fractional zero up, and then once it frees up, you put up like an A2 that you can get up on the step, and you kind of start usually, and this is not every year, but usually you start planing, and you just don't stop until you hit Hawaii, which is pretty fun.
So it's a different vibe completely than doing a transat then.
Yeah, I have never done a Transat, but I got a chat with Eric about it. He was on a pretty cool program there with those DS foils. I think it was called like Maverick or something. It was like one of the first boats with DS foils. He said he did a Transat and it was horrible. It was like I think upwind the entire way. So yeah, those Hawaii races, there's three of them. There's the Vic Maui, the Pac Cup, and the Transpac. And all three of them, basically, you kind of sail down into, so reach or whatever until the trade winds on a typical year. Then you put your kite up and you just sail with your kite up. And you usually probably switch between like an A3 and an A2.5.
What's the like nuttiest thing, like middle of the ocean thing that happened on any of those Transpac races?
It's a good question. Not too much. I'm pretty calm and collected out there. Yeah, I couldn't tell. There was nothing too crazy. Like, when you start getting close to the islands, the squalls will come in. Um, and that can get a little exciting for sure. So you prep for them. You can see them coming on the radar, but they will sneak up on you. So that can get pretty spicy.
Okay.
Other than that, it was fairly smooth sailing.
Okay. Literally.
Both times, yeah. Like one time, I got an eye infection on one of them, and it was like I had a little cut, and then just because we weren't showering and stuff, I got some bacteria in it, and then it started blowing up, and it got pretty serious. Like I couldn't see myself. I wasn't too worried about it, but everyone looking at me kept getting more and more concerned as the days as the days were getting on.
Uh-huh.
But luckily, we had a trained medic on board, and she took care of me. And
Have you ever
that
heard the term arm water cut?
no, no.
So that's when we were kids, and the kids that were sailing in the arm, who was sailing in Bedford,
Oh,
or they would
yes.
get a cut on their knee, and it would just be there all year long. It was
Yeah,
like an arm water cut.
yeah. So,
Um, so Star Sailors League. That's jumping quite a far ahead, but I've had. I guess you're the third. I had Chris and Rob Hemming on,
oh,
and it's
cool.
such a cool program to have sort of a World Cup of sailing in these really great, What are they, RC-44s or
Yeah, RC-44s exactly. Or
yeah,
they're
yeah.
47s because they put a scoop on the stern.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, like real sailing, not that I have any problem in watching the Olympics, watching the kite foilers. It's super exciting, and watching Sail GP or America's Cup. Like it's all I'm here for all of it. But to see what they do with that program and the coverage, the video coverage they have of it, I really do feel like it's a kind of a really good test of the best sailors in each country. So yeah, tell me about that event and how you got involved and what it was like.
Yeah, so I got reached out by a friend of mine, Onsol, who was working with Rob on trying to put together. Cause so like this event had been trying to be run for a couple years, and I didn't really know too much about it. And they had some training over in Switzerland or something, and I wasn't really involved in the team at all. And then I think a bunch of the members that were in the first couple training sessions that they went over there, the one they did wasn't available. So they started reaching out to other sailors that possibly would be available. They didn't even know if if it was going to the regatta was going to go off or not. So it was like, hey man, are you available for this and this date? Regatta's over here. We'd be sailing these boats. Would you be interested? And I said for sure. I'd be available. I don't think until like 3 weeks before the event, we actually got our flights and everything confirmed. So we were still like, I wasn't quite sure if we were going or not, but it was an opportunity I thought that I couldn't really, miss. And it was like I always say this: there was this team of a lot of the ex Olympians or current Olympians that did the first original training session, and then since a few of them couldn't make it, they kind of replaced them with some Canadian keelboat sailors. And I always reference there used to be this movie called like The Replacements. It was
Yeah.
like the football movie where like they went on strike or something, and like they brought in all these old dudes, and they ended up like
Yeah.
winning the championship or anything. We didn't win the championship. We had a good, but we kind of felt I kind of felt like that, and we kind of bonded as a team because it was kind of cool. There was Rob from Toronto, and then we had a Vancouver contingent and an East Coast contingent. And we had both myself and Alex, who I was he was, I think no, I was on the East Coast at that point, but the gentleman that runs North Sales, Vancouver now. So we had both East Coast and West
Alex,
Coast.
what's his name? Alex
Lebowski,
Lebowski. So is he Russian or
aka,
something?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I
Okay.
met him, and I was over in Vladivostok racing in the Russian National Sailing League, and I met Alex. He ended up moving. I was like, "Here's my number. Call me." He's like, "I'm moving to Vancouver 2 weeks." I was like, "Awesome, give me a call." And then we just became best buddies. I got him a job at he was like the top rigger in Vancouver for a while, and then when I started talking about this transition, I really thought that he was the right guy to kind of step into my shoes, and so did Ross. So he actually runs North Sales Vancouver now. And so we had this West Coast, East Coast contingent, and then
He
Rob.
was the pit guy, like
He was the pit
Alex.
guy, and
Yeah.
he killed it. I think that time that we got a penalty where we hit the mark, did a jibe. So kite went up, kite went down, did a jibe. We thought we were exonerated, so we started sailing again. Kite went up, realized we had to do another 360. Kite went down, did another 360. Kite went back up, and you don't understand the pit on these RC-44s. It's not simple.
Can only
Luckily, Alex,
imagine.
yeah, luckily Alex had done some like a lot of. He reached out to his buddies in Russia actually that sailed on the boats quite a bit and got some intel, and you could definitely tell that because. So when we showed up to this event, we only get 1 hour. Like it was timed with a guy on the boat to practice, and they literally like sails down right at 1 hour, and that's all we got. And none of us, there had been a few of us that sailed together, but not like that. And then we had about 3 minutes before the start of the first race to get the sails up and get going. So
God.
I can like pull in a jib, and that's fairly easy and kind of but to figure the whole pit out. And he was also doing the backstays or the runners. So they run to these little winches. So it was full on. So Alex did a great job on that. But yeah, in terms of the experience, I think the whole team, everybody, we had a lot of fun as a team, just hanging out, getting to know each other. And then the regatta setup was very cool. Little village right down the water. Four RC-44s. You kind of got put in a little category of four boats. You had 3 days of racing, and then the fourth day was like the medal day. And if one boat just doesn't finish last every time, it kind of gives everyone a chance on that last day to make it really exciting. And I think they did that for kind of the show part of it, where in our fleet, I think everyone but Korea, I think even if Korea had a good day and someone had the worst day or 1 and 4, I think everyone could have moved on in that last day. And the wind wasn't that good on the last day, and there was some controversy on if we were going on the water
Oh
or not.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we were the last grouping that day, so it was unfortunate, but we didn't get on the water to race that last race, and we were a couple points behind Slovenia, so they moved on and we didn't, and that was okay. It is what it is. The other guys sailed better in those 3 days of racing than we did, so
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
kudos to them.
Right. Um, I have a section on the podcast called "Hijack the Guest,"
Yep,
and that's when I ask somebody what to help me with something that I'm specifically working on. This might
yep,
be a bit weird
that's okay.
because you're primarily a keelboat guy now,
Yep,
and I've done a bit, and this happened to me a lot in the keelboat racing I've done, where you just kind of have a shitty race, and you're
yep.
out there for another 4 hours, and you're slogging around in the middle of the fleet or whatever, and it's like really demoralizing. And so, like, how do you switch your mind onto something happier? Or, like, you're still looking for wind, you're still communicating. And it's just like, there's no hope. There's just like, we really should just crack open the beers at this point. But you're still trying to race a sailboat. So, like, how do you deal with that kind of demoralizing feeling?
Yeah, I think a lot of that, and especially if you're dinghy sailing, you're probably on your own. But if you have a good group of guys or girls or teammates that you're with, keeping the morale up. Like we had Blue Nose Champs last weekend, and the last race was definitely super questionable if it should have been, fair racing, called fair racing or not. But it was, it was one of those challenging races. We were definitely in that mindset where like, it was like my friend was asking me where the wind was coming from. At one point, I said, I have no idea. And he's like, well, and before the event, I said, it doesn't matter what happens on the race course this weekend, guys. We're going to race from when the 4 minute starts all the way until we cross the finish line. And he just immediately said, hey, Drew, remember what you said before when we were coming out on day one? We need to finish this race. So let's get your head in it. Who cares if you don't know where the wind's coming from? Where do you think it's coming from? And we actually made a pretty good comeback at that point of the race. And I really think that sailing is one of those sports that you you can go out there as the best sailor in the world and not win a race. There's so many uncontrolled variables in sailing that it doesn't matter if you're the best sailor or the worst sailor. The best sailor is going to have a better chance of winning that race, but just because you might be the worst sailor or the least skilled sailor, least prepared boat, you could go out and there's some luck to it, because there's so many variables that you're trying to control that sometimes it's just out of your hands. It's in God's hands. So I think thinking like that and just keeping your foot on the pedal, and sometimes it's even more demoralizing. We're like, we got to keep going, and then like more boats are passing you. And but at the end of the day, I think you have to keep going until the end of the race, and then just kind of think about things that you might improve for your next race. And also think about things that went well in that race.
Hmm.
But there's so many variables out there. Sometimes it's out of your control. So just taking a learning lesson from that race and where you could have improved, and try not to repeat maybe an error or a mistake that you did in that race in the next race, and just try to learn from it as best as you can. And sometimes it's very challenging,
Yeah.
especially if you're emotional about it or if it's near an end of event where like it really changed your results. You can really get down about it. But at the end of the day, it's just another sailboat race out there. You're gonna have lots more. So just bringing it back and just trying to keep it simple.
One thing I did it was last night, I guess,
Yep.
that I had this experience. And I couldn't have done this when I was in my 20s or 30s, and it was really serious to me. But now that I'm 53, I was trimming the spinnaker, and I just kind of started looking to the left of the curl, like at the sunset. Like, yeah, this is great. No boats to leeward of us. It's gorgeous to be out sailing, and I'll just, turn the spinnaker, and I'm going to pretend I'm just out here sailing.
I think everyone's been in that point. No, there's no way you're a sailor out there and have won every single race you've ever been in, right? Um, and if you don't give yourself that chance, there are some times where it starts working again, and if you don't give yourself that opportunity, and those ones are some of the best. Those are the best ones when you just feel like you're a superhero because you sailed through an entire fleet. And sometimes that's luck, sometimes it's hard work, but if you don't give yourself the chances, you're not. It's not going to happen.
Good points. So you were talking about the Blue Nose Provincials, I guess, or Maritime Championships.
Yeah,
The Blue Nose has come up on this podcast a lot, maybe because I'm an East Coast guy, or but it's it's such an incredible story, really, from beginning to end.
yeah.
And you're probably the most experienced Blue Nose guy I've had on the podcast. So, like, just start. Tell me about the Blue Nose sailboat and the Blue Nose fleet, and then we can talk about how it kind of integrates into Chester Race Week. Like, if
Yeah.
someone never heard the word Blue Nose sailboat, what would you tell them?
So yeah, well, a lot of people, like especially out on the West Coast, they're like, "What do you do when you go home?" When I was working in Vancouver, I'd come home for race week every year, and so I race this 22-foot sloop called the Blue Nose, and they'd be like, "Oh my God, you race on the Blue Nose? It's still racing?" And no, 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 no. So the Blue Nose is a 22-foot sloop that was built in Mahone Bay. And it was designed for local racing and local day sailors, and it's been a very popular class for quite a long time in the Maritimes, and the actual boat is designed off the lines of the actual Blue Nose, so it's a very
Oh, wow.
pretty looking boat with a full keel and rudder, so it's a classic style boat. And the fleet's been around the Maritimes, and I think it was really popular up in Armdale or maybe Bedford or Halifax in the 80s for a little bit. And the fleet had migrated down to Chester. There was a decent sized fleet, I think, in Buffalo or like the Buffalo Canoe Club
Okay.
somewhere in New York. They keep dragging they keep showing up here now. So obviously the fleet has died. Um, but I kind of got involved with it as probably about 10 or 12 years ago, and it was just the biggest one design fleet in Chester. And the reason that I wasn't involved with it, I didn't have an opportunity. I was lucky enough, friend's father, Henry Damone, um,
Legend in the fleet, in the Blue
legend in
Nose
the oh
fleet.
yeah, legend in the fleet. And he had two Blue Noses at the time, and still does. And he offered my brother and I and one of his sons to take one for race week. So we took it, and I immediately just fell in love with the fleet. It was just due to the competitive nature of getting out there and racing. And at the time, I think we had 20, 25 boats, and there was a big youth group that was kind of around my generation and maybe slightly older, slightly younger. Like I'm an 87, so I'd say anywhere between like 92 and 85 kind of deal that were done with the dinghy sailing and getting into keelboat racing. And my brother, myself, a bunch of guys were like get on these Blue Noses, like get on them. Let's get this fleet going. And a lot of people started jumping in the fleet. And then just like any sort of fleet, soon as you start getting sailors gravitating towards a fleet, especially if they're skilled sailors, people are going to want to buy boats, get a boat, get in the fleet, hop on a boat. So we saw quite a surge of boat purchases, and actually Sean Mulrooney at South Shore Marine was had the mold and was is still building boats. So we had a surge from probably about 25 to 30 boats, I would say 4 or 5 years ago. I think during COVID, maybe just slightly before that. We jumped from like a 25 boat fleet to like a 35 boat fleet like over winter. And and now we have everyone from a family sailing together to Olympians on the course and amazing sailors. And the boats are now starting to, everyone's, I think I must have sold like 15 sets of new sails this year. And I could have sold more if I had them more in stock.
Oh, wow.
People are starting to clean their bottoms up a little bit. People are talking about getting bottom jobs. There's a lot of talk about rig tension. People are upgrading the boats, upgrading their lines. So it's like it's really taking that next level of competitiveness. Before you could almost just take your boat off the mooring and you know go race and kind of go back with maybe a year or two old sails. And now if you're not getting new sails and making sure your bottom's clean before an event, and your rig is tuned, you're not going to be able to get into the front of that fleet anymore. It's really I believe, and we don't have too many large one design fleets in Canada, but I believe like if you take the people that sail in the Blue Nose Champs and Chester Race Week, if you take the sailors, I think it's probably the most competitive fleet in Canada in terms of sailor for sailor.
Right. No,
Yeah.
you mean like sort of in the keelboat?
Keelboat.
Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah.
keelboat. Sorry, I'm talking once you get out of dinghies.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So yeah, we don't have like, there's definitely big laser events with
Yeah,
60, 80 sailors.
yeah, yeah.
That's I don't think we'll ever get to that. I could see the fleet getting up towards 50, like Armdale right now. We have we had 30 at Champs, and I don't think there was an Armdale boat down there, and I think they have 12 or 15 up there.
Okay.
Um, there's a couple other boats that are showing up, so the fleet I think will continue to build and continue to attract good
It's
sailors.
so cool. I'm gonna guess. Like I was gonna ask you how many this year, how many Olympians are gonna be in that fleet?
It's a good question. Well, like I would say people that have done campaigns, you're probably looking at, geez, like maybe 10, I'd say.
Wow.
Like 10, yeah.
But certain
Not
people
everyone
who
had been to the games, but everyone has done
yeah,
quads and was
yeah.
either the training partner or, they spent at least 4 years campaigning for Olympic campaign.
Right.
So
I'm gonna say Georgia and Antonia, who had it on their list of like events, you know, 2024 Olympic Games, Chester Race Week,
yeah,
and then Jacob Saunders, I'm imagine is me in the fleet.
yeah.
Least
He was in the fleet for maritime champs. He won't
okay.
be in
Oh,
the
it won't
fleet
be okay.
for yeah. And then I'm not. Well, it'd be great to have the girls there. Their dad owns a boat, and it seems to be a little slipperier when they hop on for sure. And we've got Lisa Ross last year came in the fleet, and like it's kind of funny, and like kudos to Lisa. Not only was she pregnant,
Very pregnant.
very pregnant, but a lot of people jump in the Blue Nose fleet and don't have immediate success. And Lisa jumped in a big event and sailed super fast and super well. And she just kept getting better every day. So it was pretty cool. I remember after day one, she had like a decent day, but I didn't think she was just going to get better and better and better every day. I was like thanking her for beating Henry in a race, and then she just came out and just started waxing everybody. Yeah,
So then, yeah, so those are the Blue Noses' biggest fleet at Chester Race Week, and this was one of the interests that Sail Canada had in doing this podcast. Was they're just really interested in this Chester Race Week thing. It's like, what is it? You know, why are there so many people? And I did do it once in 1991. My brother and I won the J24 fleet, which was a big fleet back then in the early 90s. And we
yeah,
had a great old time. Lots of crazy things going on in the 90s, lots of crazy things still going on now. It's a very fun event. But
yeah.
like what is Chester Race Week? What does it mean to the community? What is it? Why is it so popular?
I think it just has a bit of heritage to it. It's Chester Race Weeks. I think it's been around since the early 1900s, and there was some events before that. Then there were some breaks, I think, during the war and stuff. And then they kind of came back. But it's just a bit of a tradition here as a sailor in the Maritimes is to get down to Chester Race Week. And Mahone Bay is, as I said earlier, it's my favorite place to sail, but it's a beautiful location to sail, and it's Mahone Bay is fairly large. You've kind of got Chester, Mahone Bay, and kind of the edge of Lunenburg all inside a bay, and you can really, you get more than 120 boats and make sure that everyone kind of gets their own location to go sailing. And the heritage of sailing in Chester with all the old sea classes and wooden boats and stuff um, really started I don't know, it was kind of the place to go racing, I think, was Chester. And they had this race week. And Then I think in the 80s, with a lot of high performance fiberglass boats showing up, the numbers started really jumping up, and it was always the third week in August, which is kind of I would say, the hot spot of a Atlantic maritime summer. It's right when the water's pretty warm. You usually get fairly good weather in terms of sun and wind. And then on top of that, there's if you've ever met a maritime keelboat racer, they usually like to have social events after the racing is done. So whether that be raft ups after racing, swimming sometimes on the light air days, you know, and then also Chester Yacht Club puts on a phenomenal show. They have the bar running from 10 a.m. to 1 a.m. every single day. I had a good customer of mine come out from out west to sail on a J105 or something, and he's like, Drew. I was showing up at like 11 or something. He's like, Drew, I'm like, the bar opened an hour ago at 10 a.m. Like, this is me sitting there having a cocktail. But on top of that, they have like a band every single night. If you get down into Chester during race week, it's kind of like the town transforms into this little sailing community. People all kind of get either hospitality or live in there, and just the buzz around town. Everyone's there for sailing. If you say 120 boats, you average, maybe 4 or 5 people a boat. You're looking at plus 500 sailors showing up for this, and so like the average Chester Race Week day, they do have a bit of a later start, and that's due to usually this our sea breeze kicks up around noonish or starts to come in. It looks like really nice weather. I'll cross my fingers. Knock on wood for this year in terms of if you get the valley heated up, the vacuum just starts working and you get the sea breeze. We haven't seen it too much this summer, but hopefully it's kind of waiting for the big event. It's usually, you get down to the yacht club around 10 a.m. Get down to your boat, get out to the course for 11:30. Blue noses start a little bit later. Then you race all day. You come back off. They have daily awards. You might have a beer or a cocktail or a water with your friends and catch up on the day on the good parts and the bad. Then you usually go home, have shower up, have a crew dinner, and then I would say 80% of the sailors mingle their way back down to the yacht club to watch the live band and kind of mingle and brush shoulders with all the sailors, and that's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday as well.
Which is your favorite band? Because it's usually the same ones every year.
It's I would say, and there's a Blue Nose sailor, Malcolm Fraser, who does the bass in Dark and Stormy.
Okay.
And last year they did the last night, and I think there was people crowd surfing off the front edge of the Cheshire Yacht Club, which I have never seen before. I was standing back enjoying it. It was a little hot, a little crowded up near the front of it, but they they really rocked it. Another shout out would be the Hopping
Yeah,
Penguins.
I can't believe we ended up talking about the best bands at Chester Race Week, but there you have it. Tell me real quick, because about getting the loft, like North Sail Atlantic, like going back to the history of Sandy McMillan and Andreas Josenhans owning it, and it being Sable Sails, and that
Yeah.
whole thing, and it's just like such everyone in the Maritimes knows Sandy. Almost everyone's bought their sails from him. Almost everyone sailed with him. And then you
Yep.
went home, and you're the next generation. So what was that like to take it over?
Oh, very exciting. Kind of a dream come true. I don't think I could have imagined this, 10 years ago when I was working on the floor in Vancouver. But the pieces of the puzzle kind of came together at the right time. And living out in Vancouver was great, and it was a really neat experience. And but at the same time, my heart was always here in the Maritimes. I just had, an amazing job with Dennis and Chris, my coworkers out west, that I couldn't really imagine myself working anywhere else at a lot of point over the last 10 years. And then my wife is actually from the Maritimes as well, and she was really wanting to get back to the Maritimes, and I had always kind of thought it'd be pretty cool. So I brought it up with Sandy, and we started entertaining the idea, and we brought it up to corporate, and they thought that it would be a move that made sense for both parties. So getting back here, I moved back here last July, so I've been here for 13 months, and I had not, Sandy and I were still kind of working things out. But to step into the shoes, like so, North Sales Landing is a very historic past with Sandy, Andreas, and Glenn
Oh yeah.
actually owning Sable
I
Sales
know
and
people,
doing this.
sorry, people have been telling me like when you start throwing in names, you got to explain who these people are,
Oh
and I
yes,
know,
yes,
yeah.
no, yeah,
So you go ahead, like, I mean, I could say too, like, back in the 70s when Soling class was really, really like the best sailors on earth were sailing it. So we had Sandy McMillan, Andreas Josenhans, and Glenn Dexter, who I think they did the Olympics in 76. They were top three of the world. They might have won worlds.
the two
They
worlds.
won two
They won.
worlds.
They won two
Okay,
worlds.
there you
Yeah,
have it.
and yeah. So those guys were legends, and then Andreas. So they had Sable Sails, which was this loft, and North Sails. They were building pretty quick sails, and they were pretty quick sailors. So North Sails, as they do, they usually go in and they call themselves they get the tigers of the industry. So the good sailors. And so Andreas, Sandy, and Glenn were approached by North Sales, and they went from Sable Sales to North Sales.
Wait, I know we were talking about you too, and like it's such it's historical for me because everyone in town had Sable Sales hats, and all of a sudden everyone
Yeah,
had North. So was it? Did all three of them own? That was their loft, Sable.
yeah.
Okay,
Like I was shooting it with AJ the other day, and I think all three of them did. And then Glenn, and you could chat with them about the whole story, but I think Glenn ended up becoming he was a lawyer and focused on that after the sailing stuff. Sandy stayed with this loft, and then Andreas went down and started running Milford, which was our major manufacturing facility in Connecticut.
right.
AJ was also still competitively sailing. I think he won back to back Star Worlds with Buddy Melgis, and then continued on to win an America's Cup and do some pretty cool stuff. Where Sandy kind of focused on the Maritimes and was here, continuing to build sales in this loft and sell sales here in the Maritimes. So this loft has actually been a sail loft since I think it was built in 1902 and became a sail loft in 1906. Um, so they
Wow.
used to bring like the schooner sails down by like cart and buggy, and there's still like a post off the top of the loft where they used to um, like tackle it up and pull it up.
Oh, the
So
sales.
the sails, yeah, up onto the top loft. So I actually have all the doors in here are only 30 inches, and I got this couch that I wanted to bring in to make like a little lunch station, and it can't get through the front door because it's 30. So I'm gonna find out if this post off the top of the loft could still works, or if I'm gonna rip it off. So I'm gonna try to get this couch in here, and the only way is to go through the big barn doors on the second floor, which used to actually bring we used to block and tackle up old school. They block and tackled old schooner sails up onto the second floor to get worked on. So very historic building, and Sandy actually still owns the building, so he's my landlord, but also still helps out around the loft and still sells sales for North Sales. Still owns the yacht shop in Halifax. He used to own both, and it was called like North Sales the Yacht Shop. We're two separate entities now, but we work as a team.
Okay.
Jamie Kerrigan at the yacht shop, and I probably talk on a daily basis. It is a drop-off facility, so it's in Halifax, so it's very convenient for people that are in Metro Halifax to drop sales off and pop in, and it is a chandlery, as well as people on the South Shore drop things off here for it to go to the city. So we still kind of work as partners, the yacht shop and North Sales Lunenburg.
This has been a fascinating discussion, but I have my three big questions that I have to ask everybody. So,
Sure.
first one is, Drew, what do you love about sailing?
I think the thing I love about sailing is and I chatted about it earlier, is the uncontrolled variables that you have to try to manage. There's so many things out there that you're trying to, get a good educated guess on. Um, and that what I believe really brings it like a good sailor is someone that can take all those variables and try to manage them and get the most out of them. get the most out of those variables.
The next question is, what are you most proud of so far in your career as a sailor and as a sailing industry person?
Um, Probably the most proud I am is probably just like, the group of friends and sailors that I've met over the last whatever 20 plus years that I've been competitively sailing. Like I have met some pretty fun, cool people, and the friend group that I have is because of sailing. And we actually have a friend group in on the South Shore of Nova Scotia. We call ourselves the DBF And
Okay.
if you're ever at Chester Race Week, you'll see a bunch of shirts running around. That stands for the boys from the South Shore. And it was like a thing that we started on Facebook as a group, and it was just a bunch of sailors that all the same passion for sailboat racing, and it's pretty funny. And now there's probably about 20 or 30 of us from the South Shore, the general area, and we all keep in touch and all hang out, and I'd say 90% of us make it back for Chester Race Week every year.
And finally, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who, might want to get into the industry, who might want to follow your pathway and, make it a career?
So I would say, and I think we touched about this earlier, but I think like kind of look to see what you want to do, and then just because the opportunity is not available now, I would say reach out to whatever you're looking to do. If you're looking to become a rigger, a sailmaker, professional sailor, reach out to some of the companies or the people that are running these organizations or companies, and just let them know that you're interested. I had a young guy at RNSYS the other day. I was sailing on a FAR 30, and I popped off. He came, "Hey Drew, like very nice to meet you. If you ever have a chance, if you ever need someone, I'd love to get down and work at the loft." And I said, currently we don't need anybody, but send me your CV, and you're definitely going to be the first guy I call when I do need a hand. So go out there. Don't wait until a job opening pops up on your Instagram feed. Go out there and throw your resume at people. Let people know that you're interested and got some passion for it. And when something comes up, those people will remember who you are because you have shown that you have interest in what they're up to.
Awesome. Drew Mitchell, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, no problem, man. That was awesome, buddy. I really, really appreciate this, and hope to see you down in Chester sometime. If you do, we've got a spot on the Blue Nose for you anytime you get down.
Oh man, that sounds so cool. Well, you might see me in a couple days then. Until next time, make friends, have fun, and sail fast. I'll see you on the water.